Welcome to Squaring the Circle, the podcast where I chat to creative business owners to see how they balance the art and the business. Photographer, author, filmmaker, and now public speaker, Sean Tucker. Welcome to Squaring the Circle. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Ben. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, the sun's out. We're recording this on at the beginning of April. The sun's out. I've just been sitting on the bench outside. So yeah, I'm feeling very good.
Lucky you, it's raining here.
There you go. I'd like to start off with a sort of anecdote from your book, Meaning in the Making, which is out now. And there's a story about your first ever YouTube video that very nearly, it sort of got made, but very nearly didn't get released. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, in your opinion, is done better than perfect?
Yeah.
Okay, on to the next one.
I mean, it's Sheryl Sandberg's quote, isn't it? Done is better than perfect. The video you're referencing, I mean, like everybody, I went out to do a little project for myself. I mean, I was getting fed up with the photography from my day job, which was commercial product photography. So I decided to give myself the challenge to go and do some landscape photography because it's not my thing and I don't know how to do it. And I thought I'll make a little blog video with it that sort of just captures what I'm doing, the fact that I'm out of my depth, what I'm trying to accomplish, but also being honest about where I'm failing and see what happens. And I think I gave myself permission while filming it that I don't have to release it. I can just make it for me. And I got back and just cut it together. I left it for a few days. I left the footage for a few days, but then thought, let me just pull it together, see what it looks like. And I've learned to pay attention. If an edit comes together really quickly, there's probably something in it. It just flows and sort of snaps together. And this one did. And then I showed it to a few friends and they said, oh no, this is good. This is different. There's a lot more vulnerability and honesty about your journey and that you're out of your depth. You're doing this to recapture your love of photography. And so, yeah, I sort of chose to release it, even though I could see all the mistakes in it. And I was showing images in there, which were pants. They were terrible. I mean, I'm not a landscape photographer, but the story was good. And so I thought that had value. And that was a video I put out middle of 2016, where I went to Snowdonia and did some landscape photography. And yeah, that was kind of, I'd had 3 videos out on my YouTube channel before that, but they were kind of quite dry tutorials on how to shoot products, which was what I was doing for the day job. But this felt like, this is a tone of voice. This is a point of view that I could carry through, which is sharing the good and the bad, the easy and the difficult sides of the photo journey, and where you make mistakes, especially because I think that kind of vulnerability everyone can relate to. We're all struggling. So yeah, in that case, it was me getting over my own need to be a perfectionist and control stuff down to the last detail and release something because the message was good, even if there were mistakes throughout.
So that was back then, and obviously you released the film, and your YouTube channel is hugely successful now. But where you are now, do you still subscribe to that? As in, do you, like the films that come out, on a semi-regular basis? Is it still imperfect work, but the message is there, or is your bar, got that much higher?
Yeah, I mean, I have to convince myself to put a video out every time I film one. I mean, because I can always see the mistakes in it. Yeah, I mean, but that's the perfectionist curse, I mean, it's not going to go away because, and I know myself well enough to know that no matter how good I got at whatever I do, that feeling will always be in the back of my mind, and I will always have to talk myself into releasing that work into the world. Because, and I mean, I talk about this in the book, the perfectionism thing is really just fear. It's fear that I've made something that I think is good, but I can't guarantee everybody is also going to think it's good. And that's why I'm trying to make it perfect before I release it into the world so that I can guarantee everyone will like it. But that's not realistic. And it's not, I've never made anything that's perfect. I mean, that's not possible. So perfectionism is almost like a fear, and it's an excuse to not give the work you've made to the world because you can't guarantee the results. So it's a constant battle to talk myself into putting work out.
But that, yeah, obviously that's a very internal thing, isn't it? But that's fascinating, the fact that you still have those doubts despite the evidence of people, like huge hundreds of thousands of people engaging with the work. And it's fascinating to me that you still have that battle, like that internal battle, despite the evidence, I suppose.
Well, I mean that's it's a perspective thing, isn't it? Because from your point of view, I can understand why it looks like that. But I'll give you the other side. And I think if you talk to anyone who does what I do, they'll tell you some version of the same. So you see over 500,000 subscribers, right? I see maybe 20 to 50,000 people watching videos anymore that I produce, which means that more than 90% of the people who subscribed and said they wanted to watch my videos don't bother anymore because they don't care. So there's context to everything. And you can still argue, well, yeah, but 20,000 people still watch every video that you produce. That's a lot of people. It is. But what does that actually mean? It means that they're very happy to take things from you that you give for free. And I'm very happy to give things for free. But that doesn't necessarily translate into a business. It doesn't translate into people buying things from you or supporting you as an artist. It's for me to sit back and go, I'm brilliant and amazing because lots of people watch what I do. You know, I can also see where I'm failing, and things are, I mean, my channel has absolutely plateaued the last few years. Like it's not growing like it used to at all. And I'm fine with that, by the way. I'm not saying any of this to feel sorry for myself. I calculated that if I stuck to my guns and I lent into more of the philosophical side of the videos which I produced, which is what I always wanted to do, and I didn't do as many of the tutorials, I was going to lose followers because most people on a platform like YouTube are there because they want free tips on how to make their photography better, or which camera should I buy next. That's the vast majority of people who watch photography channels, but it's not the videos I want to make. So I knew that if I went the route that I wanted to go, I wouldn't see the quote unquote success other channels do. But I also knew that I'd keep enjoying what I'm doing. I believe in the work that I'm doing, and that was more important. So the numbers that attach to the work that I do don't give me confidence. I mean, if anything, you could definitely look at them from a point of view that says I'm making big mistakes if you thought the numbers equaled success, which I don't. So I kind of take all that stuff with a huge pinch of salt.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, absolutely. Um, how how closely do you, well, how close is your identity tied to what you do? Like, as in, I spoke to Ivan Weiss, which is another photographer, portrait photographer, and he was quite clear cut about it and said, "I define myself by my work," and it's
Right.
and we had a good conversation after that, and I'm really annoyed at myself for not digging into that, because my follow-up question should have been, okay, well, what happens for whatever reason you can't do your creative work or your business struggles? That's going to have a huge impact on you. So, so apologies, I'm going to now ask
Yeah.
you the question. Yeah. So how do you define yourself
Well,
by your work?
you'll get the opposite answer from me, I'm afraid, because I don't define myself by my photography or filmmaking at all. I don't. And again, you could take it all away from me today, and I'll find another way to keep doing the thing that I do that makes me me. And I think I was talking to a friend about this the other day. I think the thing that makes me me is the thing that underlines all the things that I've done, the thread that runs through everything right from the beginning. So even studying psychology years ago, or working for the church for a decade in youth ministry and poverty outreach, to starting a YouTube channel that says it's about photography on the tin, but we all know it's not. It's about other stuff. It's about deeper stuff, to the fact that now I've taken myself back to school to become a licensed therapist on the side of the day job that I'm doing. Like all of these things, the thing that makes me me, and the thing I will always find a way to do, is to help people get a handle on their lives. So photography is a job that I do that I love, and it's a creative outlet. But you could take photography away from me tomorrow, I would still find ways to keep helping people get a handle on their lives, and I'd be very happy doing it. I'd lose a creative outlet, but I'd find others. I've gone through many cycles like that. But for me, that's all the surface stuff. Like a deeper purpose for me is that how can I talk to people and help them think about the decisions that they make, the way they value things, so that they can put things in better perspective, I suppose. We live in a world where mental health pandemics or anxiety and depression and things like that. That's what I want to make a dent in. That's my life. I mean, the book that I put out is not a photography book. It is a creativity book, but so many people have said I'm not really that creative. But that book, I've felt like I've been able to think through my life better and sort of work out what I'm doing and what I'm pointing my life at. And that's, to me, what makes me me, not photography on the top level. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that says to me that and this cliche warning, because it's said everywhere. I'm not going to say your authentic self or anything like that, so don't panic. But it's you found the purpose that runs through anything. Like your values and your business or the commercial side seems to be aligned, which is I think what most people in the creative business that's where they want to get to. That's like the holy grail, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And it changes, I mean, I that's why I think of purpose as different from job, because I've changed jobs so many times in my life. But no matter what job I've been put into, I've found ways to bring who I am to that, if that makes sense, rather than trying to suggest that me gaining one set of very specific occupational skills defines me. It doesn't. I've had to adapt many times and restart careers many times, and I probably will again. I'm not naive and think I'm done. But I will bring me to whatever comes next as well. If you put me as a barista in a coffee shop, I'll find a way to help more than just make you coffee. I'm fine. I'll make you the best cup of coffee I can, but I'm going to find ways to do more meaningful stuff than that, even in that role. It doesn't matter what it is.
Has that always been a motivation for you, as in helping people?
Yeah, it has, and it's become more defined for me. I understand what I'm doing. I think initially, sort of when you go through your teens and your 20s, you're just running on intuition and trying to work it out as you go. You're driven by who you are, but you don't really know yourself very well yet. It's almost like your subconscious is pulling you forward. But the more you sort of bring it into your conscious and go, why do I make those decisions? Why do I gravitate towards that? Why do I always wind up in these particular situations? There is a reason for it, and it probably is who you are and how you're wired. And the better I've got to know myself, I think, the more I realize what I'm doing. So that now I'm in my mid 40s going, oh, I get it. There's more to discover, but I know how I'm wired, and I know now to look for how to do that thing that I think I do best, no matter where I find myself now, and to get there quicker. And because, life does change, circumstances always change, but that thing can always be brought out. And I think that's often the thing where people feel like, my life is meaningless, or my job, I don't feel like I'm getting anything out of it. Maybe you do need to change your job. Maybe it does cut against the grain of your personality, but maybe there's ways to bring who you are to your job and mean you're more fulfilled if you think about it and get to know yourself better and think a little bit laterally. Yeah.
Would you say that we'll get on to some more practical questions in a minute, but I just think this is fascinating. But would you say you have a level of contentment now?
In some ways, yes. And in some ways, everything's still changing and in flux, especially the last few years of my life. So I don't really take anything for granted, and I don't feel like I've arrived anywhere. I just think I've accepted that change is inevitable and constant, pretty much, and that I need to stay as loose and adaptable as I can. But that doesn't ever make me feel settled or feeling like I've arrived at something. I suppose the security comes in knowing that I know myself better now, in understanding what's in the box. We all have a box with us. There's a bunch of stuff in it. Most of us don't like to look at it too often, but I think I've rummaged through it quite a few times now that I know what's in there. It's not all dealt with. I don't understand all of it, but I know a lot of what's in there now. And that brings a level of, I suppose, security in that even though change is inevitable, I'll be able to handle it and make the best of it now more than I ever would before. So yeah, I don't feel settled or like I've arrived at all, but I'm more comfortable with the fact that things are always in flux.
Okay. So switching it slightly now, I would be so the vast majority of people that listen to this will be creative business owners, and so it'd be remiss of me well, if I didn't sort of talk about how potentially you structure your week, because I think that's always fascinating how I speak to some people who thrive off structure, and that actually gives them creativity because they can just park that. This is what I'm doing. And other people that potentially are quite chaotic, but that's where their creativity comes from. And obviously, if you're running a creative business, you have to blend those two. So on, maybe it's a difficult question to answer, but Monday to Friday, Monday to Sunday, how structured is your week, I suppose?
I mean, I'm pretty structured as a person, I guess. So you know, I basically run on a 2-week cycle in my head. I do because until now, for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been putting out 2 videos a month. So that means that loosely I structure things around those video releases. I know that come the first Monday, I will give myself a week to think about a concept and start scripting a video. That will be that week on the video side. And then that second week will be filming, editing, posting. And it does take half the time to conceptualize script and then half the time to film, edit, and post. But on the side of that, obviously, there's a lot of other stuff going on. So I'm trying to keep the photography that I'm doing going because I sell books and magazines of my own photography. So I need to keep that ticking over and fitting it in between the gaps. So that's why it doesn't take a week to script a video, obviously, but I need to be finding the days where the light's good to be able to go out and take photographs, which means I can't be at home scripting. And then all the other stuff that happens, answering emails and planning talks and travel and speaking at other things or running retreats or workshops. Those things kind of are seasonal and have to get slotted in all those gaps as well. So I suppose there's different tiers to what I do, but the spine of those video releases, because even though I'm not a YouTuber as in like I'm going to release multiple videos a week, because honestly I would be stretching a bit of content a long way. It would get very thin very fast if I tried to say something meaningful multiple times a week. So I've only ever promised on my channel 1 video a month. And I've often under promised, over delivered on that, but that's all I've ever promised. But that, as long as I keep that, even though that's sparser than most channels, if I keep that consistent and regular on its own terms, everything else kind of gets built around that.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Again, in a previous film, I did a bit of prep for this, and I was rewatching some films that I saw, a few years ago, and there was one sort of line in a film where you said that to run a creative business, you need to make creative compromises. So the question is, at your stage of life, are you still making those creative compromises?
I can't remember saying that or what context it was in. I'm sure you're right.
Well, it was the video where you were talking about the sort of life of being a professional photographer,
right?
And what people had to maybe think about.
Right. I mean, I think for using photography as an example, for every photographer who wants to make money with a camera in hand, I think it would be very naive to think that you can go out and make the images that you just like to make because you like the look of them, and then someone's going to come and knock on your door and go, we just love what you do, let's throw a bunch of cash at you to keep doing what you love doing. I think that is an incredibly rare scenario where it happens to a fraction of a percent of us. The vast majority of us have to work out a way to take the thing that we love doing and serve other people with it. So I might have picked up a camera years ago and loved photography, but if I just walked into a company and go, hey, I really like shooting like light and shadows and stuff, can you pay me to do that? They're going to go, no, it's not useful to us. Why do we care that you do that? And fair enough. Like, why should they care? Instead, what I should be doing, and what I did have to do for years, is go, okay, let me do a bit of research on this company. Who are they? First company I worked for full time was a company called Yuppie Chef in South Africa, which sold fancy kitchenware, kitchen tools like KitchenAid mixers and coffee machines, all that kind of stuff. So on their website, it was obvious they need product photography, clean product photography on a white background, and they need quality food photography, mostly natural light and style for their food magazine. So me walking in going, hey, look at my Instagram. This is what I do. This has nothing to do with what their business does. Why on earth would they hire me? Instead of going, okay, I need to go shoot. If I want to go work for them in particular, I need to shoot a portfolio that looks like the work that they have, but slightly better to prove that it's worth hiring me, and then go and show them that I can serve them with my camera. And I think a lot of photographers have to decide, are you an artist or do you want to make a business out of what you do? And obviously it's not that simple, because, you know, we're all trying to merge those two things together to be an artist and to make money with it. But the fact remains, you're going to have to start, at least almost all of us are going to have to start by putting our art aside and serving other people with our cameras in the way that they need us to work, not the way we want to work. So for years, I was product photographer, you know, kitchenware. Then I moved on to another company that sold sofas and beds and dining sets. Like, there's nothing creative about that work. It's a production line, that sort of photography. So I had to go on my own time, just like anybody else, just like someone who works in a bank. I had to go in my spare time and evenings and on weekends to go and shoot photography that fulfilled me creatively. The serving companies with my camera was not scratching that creative itch for me. And I had to calculate that. That's the compromise you have to make. And then go out on your own time and make the work that scratches that creative itch. And one day, if you can turn that stuff you do on the side into the stuff that pays the bills, brilliant for you. But I think you need to be realistic and know that that doesn't happen for a lot of people, and you might need to keep separating, or just protect it for yourself. Get a normal day job and keep that art for yourself on the weekends because you absolutely love to do it. But I think too many artists have this almost entitled expectation that because they love doing the thing that they do, someone should come and give them bags of cash for it. And I just think it's not realistic, and it is quite entitled. We have to be more realistic than that.
Yeah, yeah. Just, well, do you know anyone who has completely nailed it in terms of they are shooting exactly what they want, that they would be doing anyway, that they're making a living from? Because I don't.
I don't know a single photographer personally. No, I mean, I know, again, you're probably talking about the greats who like the great portrait photographers, the Annie Leibowitzes and the rest of them, who love to shoot portraits. They got known for that, and now that's what they get paid for. But I bet you even Annie has days where they want her to shoot something for a magazine cover she hates, and some art department is telling her this is the way it has to be, and she just has to do it because she's serving a client. It's true for even the guys at the very, very, very top. But yeah, I mean, that's the world. That's the reality of that as a job, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. When talking, sort of switching gears slightly to the creative side, it's a term that's bandied around loads now. You know, creative flow, getting into that flow state. And I was listening to a good podcast the other day, so it got me thinking about it, and it was just around the same time that I was thinking about, you know, what to talk to you about. So I'm going to sort of ask the question of, when can you pinpoint the last time that you were in a state of quote unquote creative flow, and if it's something that potentially you can you've got a method to get there, because that's where we all want to be, isn't it, in that kind of nirvana state. So yeah, when was the last time you were in flow, and how did you get there?
I reckon Sunday. Last Sunday, I went up to Newcastle. The light was out. It was good. That's the only reason that, and I wanted to go see the Chris Killip exhibition. The only reason I was there was to take photographs, because I knew the light would be out, and it was a city I hadn't explored. And I mean, my process is I almost fool myself into it. So, you know, I park the car and I'll get out, I'll put headphones in, and I'll listen to, lots of street photographers say you don't do this, but works for me. I'll put podcasts in my headphones so that it's engaging a different part of my brain. You know, I'm listening to a conversation that is engaging that sort of linguistic part of my brain. And then everything else just becomes visuals. So, and I'll walk fast, and I will just take images as I go, quite intuitively. If something sort of leaps out to me, I'll shoot it. There were only a couple of occasions where I thought, oh, this would make a good shot, and tried to get the shot I pre-envisaged. The rest of it was quite intuitive as a way of making images. Yeah, and I was probably out for about 3-4 hours, you know, including coffee and a burrito at some point. But like that's for me, I think Yeah, those are those days. Walk fast, listening to some kind of podcast that's or audio book that's keeping that part of my brain busy, and letting the visual side of my brain just go to work more intuitively and see what comes out.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, because the all the when you hear people talk about that, it's usually, and I'm the sort of opposite. I need sort of quite gentle music, actually,
Yes.
just to sort of take myself off, but without concentrating on something. Because if my brain's not that good, if I'm concentrating on something, I can't be sort of thinking, creatively. So that's interesting. Just out of interest, what podcasts do you listen to?
At the moment I am binge watching Smartless. I don't know if you've come across it. It's
No.
Sean Hayes, Will Arnett, and Jason Bateman started it in which is a killer combo. They're all mates anyway. We've just gone through and done a bunch of interviews with directors and actors and comedians over since the beginning of lockdown. So I've been binging that, which is quite entertaining. Yeah, and I know what you mean. I mean, I do have days where I go out and I've got like ambient soundtrack stuff which I'll listen to every now and again, but I have a tendency to overthink things and not give myself permission to take photographs because it's not good enough. And I know that if I distract myself linguistically, I'll take more images for some reason, because I don't have time to overthink it because I'm thinking about other things. And I find it's a very subjective personal thing, isn't it? But that kind of works as a trick for me. And I find that it doesn't stop me from concentrating. It makes me work a little more subconsciously than consciously, because I tend to be my own worst bully. So quietens that down.
If you overthink the actual taking of the images, do you overthink the images that you share? Because you're very consistent on social media, and but obviously with the amount of eyeballs you have on your photos, if you're struggling to please the audience of one, which is you, it must be even more difficult, popping it on social media.
I don't take it too seriously. I think that's what saves me. I don't take, I mean, Instagram for years, until quite recently, until maybe a year ago, I posted an image every single day. And there's no way you can take a good photograph to post every single day. So I used Instagram like a scrapbook and just posted ideas for images, or something that had something interesting about it, but it wasn't the final image. So no, I've never approached Instagram in particular or taken it seriously like it's some kind of portfolio of my best images. I post less now, and I curate it a little more now. But again, like I don't care. I mean, that for me is a way to test ideas out rather than, it's not my website, for example. Then I will overthink what goes up. This represents me visually. I'll be quite careful there, but no, social media, I don't care as much. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's probably the best way around it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, because you can take it all too seriously, can't you? And you can take people's comments too seriously. Like, did enough people like this? Did someone say something mean about it? I really couldn't care what people think about individual images I post, because you don't know what I'm doing. I mean, sometimes I'm posting images that are project ideas for something that's quite a way down the track, that when you see it in context you'll be like, oh, that's quite a clever idea, but you can't, and that's not why I'm showing you. So I'm sometimes doing market research. I'm sometimes just testing visual ideas to see what the response is like. I've been messing around with infrared recently for the moment, which is an incredibly polarizing thing for some reason. Some people really don't like it. They treat it like it's a gimmick of some sort, instead of the fact that it's actually the light that's around us that we can't see. We don't have the equipment to see with our human eyes, which I find fascinating. People get quite upset that it's not the way I see things when I walk around, so it's not real. But again, like, that's for a project. That's for something that's coming down the pipeline, and getting all this feedback helps me know how do people take this sort of work in? What are the barriers you have to overcome with people's psychology because they hate or like or love, or you know whatever you happen to be doing? It's not going to stop me doing it because I know why I'm doing it. I've got the purpose for it. But it's all good information to have.
Mm. Maybe that's the best way to look at it. Information is giving you that kind of feedback, positive and negative. There was a I deliver some workshops with young people, and I always open it up to some for some questions at the end. And there was a really, very innocent question, but it kind of broke my heart in some ways. And this young photographer, she's about 19, quite, she was very good at what she did on her phone, mostly street photography. And her simple question is, how do I get more likes on social media? And
Well,
and yeah, it was so depressing in some ways, because she's absolutely in that age where likes equals good, basically.
yeah.
And I tried to say that you've got to try and step away from that, and as long as you're creating the images that you like, that you're on the right path, essentially. But it's difficult to get that over, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in the book, I say if you want more likes or follows, get naked or get a puppy. Like, because people love that stuff on Instagram, but you're not suddenly a great photographer. You're just feeding short attention span of people who are looking for bite-sized entertainment on Instagram. So the sooner you get into your head that metrics like likes or follows or subscribers on social media mean quality or suggest you become a master of your art. I mean, I have a large following. I know so many photographers who are so much better than me, who have tiny followings compared to me. And I know awful photographers who have much bigger followings than me. It doesn't mean what you think it does. So stop chasing. The sooner you stop chasing that, the better. Make great work and build your audience on your terms. And don't worry about how big or small it is. Worry about what does that core audience look like. Because I mean, if you've heard of there was an article that did the rounds years ago called "A Thousand True Fans" by a guy named Kevin Kelly, who basically made the point that an artist can make a living off 1,000 true fans, and then defines a true fan as somebody who will come out to your talk or buy a print or buy your zine or whatever it is. If you can get 1,000 true fans, that's very different from 1 million followers, because you could have 1 million followers and still not have 1,000 true fans. But you could have 1,000 followers and have 1,000 true fans. It's the quality, not the quantity. Like, most people who follow or subscribe to me have never bought anything from me and will never support me. They just want to take free information. They're not going to help me support myself as an artist. It's building that solid core, and that's not about the big number.
Yeah, totally agree. That's what I should have said to that young person. He should have been with me at that time. Just before we go on to the final three, a quick one that's just come into my head. Because when I was hearing you, this was a few months ago, it was on another podcast, and there was a comment that really stuck with me, that you said, I'm not going to release a photo book because my images aren't good enough. Do you think you'll ever get there? Just because you've written a book on creativity, you've released films of incredibly high standard on YouTube. Now, of course, it's different, releasing on YouTube. But and you mentioned earlier that you haven't arrived in a certain spot. Do you think you'll ever arrive at the point where you want to release your images in a book?
I don't know. I hope so. And I don't think it's about. I certainly don't think about it like it's about the quality of my images. It's about how purposeful I'm being to create sets of images that tell a story or have a narrative or have a theme. And that's something I haven't really done. So I've been releasing books of photography every year for the last 5 years, but they are collections of 90 images from that year with no real theme or rhyme or reason to them. They just are what they are. And the reason I say that I'm not in the place to put out a proper hardcover monograph with my images in it is I don't have anything to say with those images that I've made yet. I need to give myself a task, like a direction, a story to go tell, and then plug away at that for a while. And then maybe I would have, but that's my own fault. There's no one else to blame for that. And it's not about skills at this point. I don't need better cameras. I don't need more techniques. I probably need less. It's just about picking that story to tell and then plugging away at it for a long time. So that's kind of it's what needs to happen, and it is what I'm looking at next and slowly moving towards.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. All right, Sean, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've still got the three questions to go, so I'm going to go into the first of the three, which is the questions I ask all my guests. So, how do you define success, and what does it look like for your business or craft?
For me, it is about, am I having the impact that I want to have with my work? It's not, I'm not financially ambitious. I don't want money. It's not important to me. I want to be able to pay my bills with what I do forever. That would be amazing. And it's changing a lot at the moment. So there's no guarantee it will do that forever. But if I can have an impact in the way that I intend with what the work that I put out. And again, like I do different things, so it's difficult to sort of lump everything together. But for example, putting out the book and the YouTube channel, if I can keep getting those emails every now and again that say, wow, that rescued me from a really bad decision, one of those emails will keep me going for months, at hearing how something has really impacted somebody. I mean, I had a story, this happened not long ago, probably last year summer. I had somebody get hold of me saying, he sent me an email saying that he was really battling depression. He had an injury, and he had got into his car to go to the Lake District and had a bottle of pills and a bottle of Jack Daniels, and he was going to climb the hill. He'd had enough, and he stuck in headphones to listen to my audiobook for The Meaning in the Making. And he listened to, one chapter, two chapters, three, and he got to the top of the hill. He thought, I'll listen to a few more, 4, 5, 6 chapters in. And he thought, I'll just keep going for a while. And he wound up back at his car at the end of the book. And then he drove home. And the email he sent me was, the subject line was, "You saved my life," which obviously I didn't. But like, I know, and I don't think of myself as any kind of hero. I didn't do anything special other than make work that I wanted to help people. I wanted it to help them rethink their lives, or find a bit of hope for themselves, or get a better handle on their existential, pain they're going through. It did that for that guy, and not because I'm a genius, but because it hit him at the right point where he needed to hear that stuff. That one email will keep me going for a year. That's success to me. If I can collect stories like that on an individual level, where those things have really connected with people like that, I can't ask for better than that. And if I can keep paying my bills whilst doing that, I have absolutely everything I need. I don't need anything else.
Wow, that's incredibly powerful. Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, sounds pretty successful to me. just
Yeah, I mean,
that one email.
yeah, well, that's it. I think that's what, going back to the numbers thing. Like, I think a lot of us think like big numbers equal success, and a lot of people have that as their goal or their target. I promise you, whatever number you achieve, take it from somebody who's got a number you might want. You'll get here and realize it doesn't mean a thing. It really doesn't. That those individual interactions and stories and ways you make a difference, that's everything.
Absolutely. Just picking up on something you said there, where you may not be able to do this forever because of things that are changing. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we're all seeing it. Everyone who does what I do. I mean, I think a lot of us on the YouTube side, a lot of us had this assumption that going into, pandemics in 2020 and lockdowns, that YouTube would really pick up because people would be sitting at home watching YouTube. But the opposite happened, and it's not just me. It's all of my contemporaries. I know other people who do this, obviously. We've all seen a massive slowdown, which is definitely algorithmically driven. People who subscribe to your channel, they don't see your videos anymore. People who hit the notification bell don't even see your videos anymore, even though that's the promise that YouTube makes. Which means if people don't watch, you don't get the ad revenue, which means the sponsors aren't around as much. That there's nothing we can control. I mean, my videos I think are better than they have been, and they're getting better all the time, but the metrics are going the other way, which means I can't change anything. It just is what it is. I don't own YouTube. I just own my tiny channel. And if I want my videos on there, I'll play by their rules, and I'll have to go with whatever tide comes in or out, depending on what goes on there. So that's changing a lot. And I've been hit by stuff like Brexit, for example, and my sales of photography books have been decimated since Brexit, because we can't ship to Europe anymore because everyone's stung by import duties so heavily they can't buy from us anymore. So all these things mean that we've taken, like, people who are in my position have taken a massive financial hit from what we used to have. And if that keeps changing, we have to make a plan. We have to do something else. So yeah, I'm staying loose with it, open-minded, which is why I'm going back to studying to be a therapist now, because I'm like, well, if I need another day job, let's get an early jump on that and see what that might be. And I can keep doing this on the side, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah. See, now I thought you were going to say something to do with AI, which of course is. I was having a conversation with another photographer who's a street photographer locally to where I am, and he was saying that him and his contemporaries, they sort of run a collective, and they were saying that there's quite a few photojournalists in there, and they say they're not even being sent to people to places now, because it's going to get to the point where newspapers and publications can just basically type in a prompt, and there'll be an image that sort of sums up the copy essentially. So yeah, it's changing times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how true that is, just because I mean, you if any kind of journalistic outlet was caught doing that, faking images through AI, I think they would lose all credibility, because it'd be like a reporter making up the story from what they thought it would look like instead of going and interviewing people. There still has to be some credibility there. I understand the panic that photographers are having, but I don't share it personally. I just know that it's going to change things, just like the advent of Photoshop changed things. But it doesn't. When Photoshop came around in the 90s, it didn't suddenly mean that we don't want photography where we can believe what we see. It didn't suddenly mean absolutely every image out there was photoshopped and we couldn't trust our eyes anymore. We know the difference between a photoshopped image and not. And when we find one where they suggest it wasn't photoshopped and it actually is, we all call foul and we burn the place down. So why won't that be the same with AI? I think there will still be a clear separation between human-made photography and AI-made photography, and we will all want to know. And I bet you there'll be legislation at some point where you'll have to put some kind of disclaimer that says where this was taken and how it was generated. Was this made in reality, or was it created in a computer? There'll always be that separation. Just like if suddenly newspapers started to go out there and put photoshopped images on their front covers for news stories, that institution would be dead tomorrow. It's not true that will happen. I think it will change some of the industry. Like, I mean, I had, when I used to do product photography, 2016, I remember, was the first year we were all passing around the IKEA catalog, because it was the first year where the entire catalog was 100% computer generated, which definitely put the nail in the coffin for photographers like me who were working in product photography. Yes, it will absolutely change their industry, but it won't change portrait photography. People will still want real portraits of them. It won't change journalism at all, because you can't replace an AI generated image with a real photograph and not tell people. I still think that there'll be adjustments to be made, but photography still will have its place. We'll just all need to shift.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I don't know how we went down that AI rabbit hole, but well, I suppose it took 45 minutes, so there we go. So second question for your chosen profession, whichever one that is, what is the book or resource that has had the biggest impact on you?
I mean, probably YouTube. I mean, I know it'll sound like a shallow answer, but it's the reason I'm on there. I think it's the fact I didn't study photography. I taught myself on YouTube because other generous photographers gave a lot of information for free, and I was able to completely design my own curriculum and build my skills from scratch by watching other people teach me how to do it, which is what I try and do as well. So as a platform or resource that's made the biggest technical impact, I would say YouTube by a country mile, really. I mean, there's obviously been a lot of books I've read that have really changed things as well, but that's more to do with the way that I think than building skills, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, sure. We're on to the last question, but just before we go on to that, do you want to give yourself a plug in terms of where can people find you online? And you've mentioned the book a few times as well, where people can find that too.
Yeah, just search my name, Sean Tucker, on YouTube. You'll find me at Sean Tuck, SeanTuck on Instagram, or Vero, or Twitter, wherever you happen to hang out. And The Meaning in the Making is the book. You'll find it on Amazon or wherever else you buy books. You'll be able to pick up a copy there.
Brilliant. Yeah, and highly recommended. Anybody in the creative industry could do a lot worse and read that. It's brilliant. Okay, so the last one. In one sentence, what one piece of advice would you give a person starting in your industry tomorrow?
Just patience. Honestly, that's the whole thing. I think, yeah, at the risk of making it longer than a sentence, I think, I think, I think, if you're like me, you're way too hard on yourself and you expect results a lot faster. And I think if I could go back and talk to myself making the transition to photography years ago, I would say just be patient. You will make interesting work. It won't happen as fast as you think it will, but just one more step at a time and just keep moving.
I think that's something that over the last 2 years I've really tried to take on board. Like, just as long as you're moving forward in however quickly or slowly that is, as long as you're putting one step in front of the other and you're going towards a goal that you may or may not get to, that's the most important thing, because all the fun stuff happens on the way anyway, doesn't it? So yeah, patience is completely key with absolutely everything. So brilliant. All right, well, Sean, I think we've come to the end of the chat. So once again, huge thanks for taking the time out to speak to me. I've had a lovely chat, and have a lovely rest of your afternoon.
Great. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.